Jett. Welcome back to the episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. I am in my room. Yes, I wanted to record this video last night. Unfortunately, the hotel I was staying at had no Wi-Fi, so I had to wait till I got home. I live an hour away from the racetrack, so it wasn't a far drive, but yeah, this video is probably going to be up late Sunday night. Sorry about the delay, but blame Super 8. Ain't my fault. Anyways, let's talk about the race. So first off, huge thank you to NASCAR, Osley from NASCAR. Huge thank you to you for inviting me out to the racetrack. I was able to get in the garage area, the VIP access part of it, and it was unbelievable. I've been to Daytona, I've been inside before, but it was awesome just to be able to see the next gen cars for the first time up close. I gotta say, they are much louder and sound a lot better than the Gen 6 car. I have to say that because this is the first time I've ever been to the next gen, to a race under the next gen era. And I was nervous about the type of racing we were going to see because super speedway racing in this new car hasn't been the best, but this race had it all. It had great racing, nice strategy. Of course, we saw some of that manufactured teamwork, great finish, and some big crashes. We're going to get to that later, but wow, this race had everything. Three things were going on. First off, who was going to win the race, who would win the regular season championship, and who would take home the 16th and final playoff spot. Now, only three drivers could make it in on points: Bubba Wallace, Ty Gibbs, and Daniel Suarez. But Bubba was in the catbird seat. As long as he didn't get too far out of the way, didn't lose a draft, as long as he was around Ty and Suarez, the only thing he didn't need is for a new driver to win and he'd be in the playoffs. However, everyone else, like Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, all these other drivers like Adrian Allmendinger or the SHR drivers of Eric Almirola, Chase Briscoe, and those guys, they needed a win. And what I was surprised by this race was the lack of cautions. We only saw 5 of them, 2 for stage cautions, the other 3 were actual crashes. But the lack of racing, or lack of crashes, the racing was at a high intense level, especially in stage 2, where there was a good time. You saw 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 from first place down to last. You saw 6-7 rows of cars 3 wide, just inches from each other for a good period of time. This wasn't 1 or 2 laps. We're talking about 5, 6, 7, a good handful of laps. We saw some 3 wide racing, and it was very intense, very exciting to watch. But of course, when we talk about Daytona, you're going to have some of these big time crashes. And I know NASCAR gets a lot of flack with this next gen car, but I got to say the next gen car went through hell tonight, and it held up pretty well in terms of safety standards. The first big crash took place at the end of stage 2. We expected the big one to happen. And of course, when you get to the closing stages of a race, drivers get more antsy. They want to get those stage points. The big one will occur. And this is coming to the end of stage 2. Joe gives racing drivers Ty Gibbs and Christopher Bell. Bell gives Ty Gibbs not a good shove, sends him into Ryan Blaney, who goes head on into the outside wall. Huge contact, 16 cars in total involved in this race. Like I said, Ty Gibbs, a playoff contender, he was knocked out of the race. Also, some other drivers that were banking on trying to score a win to make it into the playoffs, they were knocked out, and the hit Blaney took was unbelievable. And it was a similar hit that he took, I believe, in last year's 500, or I should say this year's 500, I think it was, where he also went hard head on into the outside wall. NASCAR, with those new adjustments with the front clips to bend more, to make it more crushable area, did help a lot, since we saw the car, the rear tires of the car lift off the ground, which is a good sign. We didn't see a car stop that we have seen in other next-gen cars. When they crash and hit a wall, they usually stop. We didn't see that this time around. We saw it actually get up in the air, like the wall absorbed the energy. Was good to see, but it was a huge hit. But Blaney was able to get out of his car under his own power. And then we saw one of those "what did we just see" moments on the backstretch, because after that crash at the end of stage 2, NASCAR went under a red flag situation. And then I looked at the TV screen and I saw Brad Keselowski just turning left, going in circles on the backstretch. Apparently there was fire in the car. Fire was building up in the car. Smoke was building up in the car. And Keselowski continuing to drive it to try and get the smoke to clear away worked. But at the time, it looked so random. It was weird. It reminded me of like Sterling Marlin in 2002 when, what was he doing on the backstretch? It was so confusing and weird, but obviously it worked out in the end. But it was just one of those what did I just see type of moments. And we saw more of that later on in this race. Now, throughout the race, Denny Hamlin had, again, a penalty on pit road. Took him out of contention for a long time. Martin Truex Jr., though, was staying in the pack, and he was able to win the regular season championship, I believe, by the end of stage number 2. So that was locked up. And then we focus on our attention to the 16th and final playoff spot. Now, Bubba Wallace, he scored stage points to stage 1 and then took a back seat. For a majority, if not all of stage number 2, he wasn't really anywhere near the pack. Majority of that stage, we saw him near the tail end of the field, obviously trying to stay away from the drama, from the crashes. But up front, we saw some of these big names, these must-win contenders suddenly start to make their moves. Chase Elliott, he needed to win. He had a really good car. Obviously, the odds, I mean, when you think about Daytona, it's very difficult to bank on Daytona to win, but he had a real good car near the end of the race. He was in position to win. Fortunately, he had a couple of blue ovals that were just surrounding the field, especially the front of the pack. Near the late stages of the race, it seemed as though that SHR was in prime position to win when you had both Eric Almirola and the 14 of Chase Briscoe out in front. You also have to throw in Harrison Burton in the mix. He was also up towards the front for a good part of the race, near the ending of the race. And it seemed as though that a shocker would occur if maybe the 4 drivers will work together and one of the, either the 10 or the 14 will go to victory lane. But then, of course, you have a driver like Kevin Harvick, who hasn't gone to victory lane yet in his final season. He comes over, takes control of the race after pit stops, because once pit stops occurred, you had front part of the track, or front part of the group, I should say, they came on the pit road. Then the second group came on the pit road. Harvick was able to beat out everyone off of pit road, and he would assume the lead in the closing laps of the race. And it was getting real intense. Before that final round of green flag pit stops, cars were getting single file. With the 14, the 10, the 4, with those cars out in front, including the RFK drivers out in front, you could just make your bet. No way you're going to try and make a move around them until after pit stops. Then we started to see things get more aggressive, which led to one of the worst wrecks I've ever seen in my entire life. You know it, you see it. I mean, it was talked about all over social media. It was even trending at one point. Ryan Preece coming to the finish of the race with, I think, 4 or 5 laps to go, makes contact, gets sent sideways into the grass with contact help from Chase Briscoe, and goes for a ride. To this day, I am still in disbelief by the ride he took. I think he nearly flipped almost a dozen times. I have never seen a car flip like that. It was like a roller coaster. And what I mean by that is usually when a car comes in the air then lands down, they usually stay down. But with Preece, it looked like he picked up speed. Like he flipped, went up in the air, came down, then went back up in the air, even higher it seemed. It looked like Waltrip in 91 or Wallace in 93 at Daytona. It was unreal. It looked like a video game movie. It looked like it came out of a movie. The way that car just tumbled so ferociously, so aggressively. Somehow, Ryan Preece was able to get out of his car under his own power. He was put on a stretcher and was taken to the hospital and was kept there overnight for further evaluation. He did post a tweet, though, I believe late that night, very late, in the early mornings of Sunday morning, where he said, if you're going to be a race car driver, you better be tough, which is a badass tweet, I got to say. But yeah, it was just a hellacious accident. And I was scared. You could hear a pin drop in the crowd when that crash occurred because everyone thought he was seriously injured. I mean, how could you not think that? When you look at that crash, it just didn't look real. Now, I know there's going to be some safety pundits out there that are going to criticize the next gen car because, number one, the roof hatch, part of the roof hatch was gone, as well as part of the window net was kind of loose. I understand that, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. When was the last time you saw a crash this violent? We've seen flips occur. We saw it with Blaine Perkins in the Xfinity Series. We saw Harrison Burton flip. We've seen cars flip. Chris Buescher flipped at Charlotte last year. But it wasn't this. It wasn't like this. I've never seen a car flip so violently. It digged into the grass, ripped everything out, but the main center, the survival cell kit of the car remained intact, which is the most important thing. And even the landing at the end was such a hard landing at the end, right before he landed on his wheels, that you have to commend the NASCAR and the next gen car for something like this. I know it gets its criticisms and some of it's deserved, but tonight the next gen car was pushed to its limit in terms of safety with Ryan Blaney's head-on crash and this tumble with Ryan Preece. For both of those drivers to get out of their cars after those hits I was so relieved. I can't come up with the words to describe it because I didn't know what to say, especially when I was in the crowd that night. I didn't know what to say because I've never seen a crash like that in my life. And yeah, I mean, man, I hope Ryan Preece is able to maybe rest a race next week. Who knows? We don't know what his condition is on that, but just you got to get props to NASCAR for the next gen car, because for him to walk away from that crash, that's unreal. Now, after that crash, we went to NASCAR overtime. And again, up front, it was just a crowd of Fords. You had, I think, on the top side, you had Buescher, Keselowski, and Almirola. On the inside, you had Harvick and Chase Elliott. Elliott, he was there, but I mean, I knew unless something major happened, there was no way Chase Elliott was going to get by. I must say, though, Brad Keselowski is the greatest teammate, I think, in history. I mean, Again, Keselowski had the opportunity. He could have done something to move Buescher out of the way. Because remember, both Keselowski and Buescher were in the playoffs. If Keselowski would win, nothing would happen. Keselowski would just have a win in the column. But he chose to push Chris Buescher and stay behind Chris Buescher, pushing the 17 to his third win in 5 weeks. Buescher wins at Daytona, gets even more playoff points added to his name. Keselowski finishing in the second position. And because that there is a repeat winner, that means Bubba Wallace will make the playoffs for the first time in history, meaning that both 2311 cars will be a part of the chase for the championship. Now, as a Bubba fan, I mean, to say I was happy was a bit of an understatement. But yeah, absolutely awesome finish to what was a great race. I mean, yeah, you had a little bit of freight train, but I thought this was one of the best super speedway races in quite some time. Some people are going to be criticizing super speedway racing. I saw some idiot on Twitter that said super speedway racing should be done away with, or something along those lines, that it's time to move on for super speedway racing. And I understand as a reaction, because what happened with Ryan Preece and Ryan Blaney. I think, but the danger is the cool, or I should say the cool part of it, but it's the most intriguing part of this style of racing, to see a completely different style of racing that you're not used to seeing. When you have 36 packs of cars on top of each other, pack racing, basically I-95 traffic at 180, 190 miles an hour. It's a unique style of racing. Yes, it's frowned upon. It can be frowned upon, and it's understandable why some people don't like it. Obviously, when it goes wrong, you hate super speedway racing. But I thought for this race, yes, what happened with Ryan Preece was absolutely scary. But from a racing perspective, from what we saw here tonight, I thought we saw some fantastic racing, great pushing, great shoving, a lot of scary moments. There were some times drivers were doing things, hitting each other, that I thought, how did they not wreck? I can tell you, as someone in the stands that night, my heart was beating out of my chest. Partly because I'm scared of this style of racing, and also because my driver Bubba's in it. I thought when Jimmy retired, I was like, okay, I can relax with this style of racing. Nope. Bubba's got to raise my blood pressure now. So I'm pretty sure by the time I'm 30, I'm going to go gray. But yes, overall, it was a great race. I loved it. Loved the experience at Daytona. Can't wait to come back to Daytona again. And now the playoff field is set. 16 drivers are going to be contending for the playoffs for the championship beginning next weekend at Darlington for the Southern 500. Bubba now being the final entry. I will be posting a video going more in depth with the NASCAR playoffs. Who will be moving on? Who will be eliminated? So make sure you look out for that later this week. What are your thoughts on the race? Let me know in the comment section down below. Until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thank you so much for watching. Congratulations to Chris Buescher, your winner at Daytona.